welcome everybody. Welcome to this lovely webinar, a very interesting and exciting webinar that I am looking forward to. And join me in welcoming Hetty Brand Boswijk. She's from Netherlands. She's a certified coactive coach, a certified neurotransformational coach, and a master licensee of neuroscience and effectiveness. So Hetty is a faculty member in leadership development programs, and she's also a speaker at various forums and conferences. Her primary focus is emotional intelligence and agility, and she incorporates neurosciences in her coaching. And that was something which excited me, and I thought I should bring Hetty to our audience to see or to learn from her what neurosciences is, what is this concept, and how do we apply it in the world of coaching. She's got a very vast experience, and she's worked across borders, across organizations. Today, she brings us a glimpse of how neuroscience impacts ourselves as well as others. And more so if we spend all our time being a human doing and forget that we are also a human being. So she will share with us how do we apply neuroscience to the world of coaching. Before I hand over to Hetty, I would also like to welcome Shailendra Jha. Shailendra Jha is our TCC coach, the part of CTT family. So CTT family already knows who Shail is. And Shailendra has volunteered to be a coachee for today's session. So thank you so much, Shailendra, for helping all of us learn what neuroscience is and application of it in the coaching. So thank you so much. And with this, Hetty, I completely hand over to you. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me today. And thank you for that lovely introduction. I hope I managed to actually be who you said I am, but that's the whole thing about being and doing, of course. I'm really excited to be with you today, and I realize we only have 1 hour of time, so I'm going to go speedily into my presentation. And if it's okay with you, I think that it's probably best if you have any questions as I'm speaking, that you put them in the chat, because we've reserved some time at the end for Q&A, and then we can come back to those questions. But of course, today's webinar is not the end of our connection, it's the beginning. And I would always invite people to reach out to me on LinkedIn after these webinars. I do believe I'm the only Hetty Brand Boswijk on LinkedIn. I've never seen another one. So I would invite you to connect with me after the webinar, and then via the direct message in LinkedIn, you can ask me any questions. I'm more than happy to send you resources for further study, etc. So without further ado, I will share my screen and go into my presentation, which is about coaching the whole person from a neuroscience perspective. Now, of course, as coaches, we're not oblivious to the fact that when you're coaching the whole person. I think, you know, we know from our coach training programs that we're not there to see a person as a problem and to fix the problem. We see them as a whole person. And what I'd like to do today is just give you a tiny insight into one specific topic around coaching the whole person, so the human doing and the human being, from a neuroscience perspective. I have to say, bringing this into a sort of half an hour presentation with a demo is like putting 100 books into one tweet. There is so much to know about this. But moving on, I think the most important thing, first of all, is for me to say a couple of disclaimers. I am not a neuroscientist. I don't pretend to be one. What I am is an evangelist on the inclusion of neuroscientific knowledge in coaching. Neuroscience is not only about the brain, as many people may think it is. It is a field of study encompassing the various scientific disciplines dealing with the structure, development, function, chemistry, pharmacology, and pathology of the nervous system, which goes from your brain to your toes. So it's about the whole body. Everything you're about to hear is valid with or without a crisis. However, a crisis of any kind, such as a pandemic, even though we might be getting used to it right now. It exacerbates the matters concerning the human doing and the human being, which means that in current times, you're likely to see the effect more often with your clients. And that's why I've been focusing on this particular topic for the last 2 years. So what is human doing versus human being? Well, coaching helps clients to detach the human doing from the human being. And when I talk about, I always say it's very strange that in the English language, we have this general word for who we are as people, the human being, because identifying what someone's default is, either human doing or human being, brings awareness to an imbalance that we see in our clients. An imbalance plays out in different areas of the brain and body. I don't suppose it will surprise you to know that if somebody is stressed, everything that goes on, they think they're going on in their head. But the impact of that stress and the chemicals in the brain on the rest of their health, so the body, the mind, the spirit is incredible. It's can't be seen as separate. Focusing and strengthening the area that is less dominant enables balance. And very often it's the human being that's less dominant. Some people are more human being than human doing, but that is rare. So, quick question. Maybe you could put some answers in the chat. How would you classify yourself? As the human doing or the human being? And to help you answer that question, how much time have you spent doing since Monday morning? So do you believe you're sort of in balance, 50 to 75%? Or have you been so stressed out recently that it's been sort of 75 to 100% of just doing? And when I say doing, I mean focused on task, which isn't a bad thing. We all know in coaching, in life, nothing is right, nothing is wrong. But focusing on doing can actually not be too good for you. Okay, so we've got some answers coming up. 50 to 75, 75 to 100. Here we go from the people that have answered up to now. Doing 50 to 75, 75 to 100. Oh, Sandeep, nice, 25 to 50. Congratulations. So this is about finding balance. It's about looking at how can we balance the human doing and the human being, because ultimately the impact on ourselves and on our environment will be much heightened and more effective if we can find that balance. So I just want to go into a little bit of science for 2 minutes, because the two chemicals that I'm going to be speaking about, you may know what they are, but I just want to explain them for those who aren't sure. So we all know that the world thinks dopamine is the happy hormone. Dopamine is actually a type of neurotransmitter. Your body makes it, and your nervous system uses it to send messages between nerve cells. When you think your nervous system is throughout your body, just imagine what the messages are that are being sent from your brain to your gut or to any other part of your body. That's why they're called chemical messengers. And dopamine plays a role in how we feel pleasure, but it's not the only thing. Norepinephrine is a naturally occurring chemical in the body that acts as both a stress hormone and a neurotransmitter. And it's released into the blood as a stress hormone when the brain perceives that a stressful event has occurred. So it is important in situations such as we're going through right now. As a quick note to this, dopamine regulates mood and muscle movement and plays a vital role in the brain's pleasure and reward systems. But we also know about serotonin, and unlike dopamine, the body stores the majority of serotonin in the gut instead of in the brain. Serotonin helps regulate mood, body temperature, and appetite, etc. So moving on quickly. I always need to check in when I use this as an example about whether somebody knows the story of Goldilocks. And it's quite possible you do, but I'm just going to give you a snippet of what the story of, it's a fairy tale. It's the Goldilocks fairy tale. And it's about a little girl who's lost in the woods, and she's hungry and tired, and she sees a small house in the wood that belongs to the 3 bears. So she goes in, the bears aren't home, and she sees food on the table. And she thinks, oh, great, 3 bowls of porridge. Daddy's bowl of porridge was too hot. Baby's bowl of porridge was too cold. Mummy's bowl of porridge was just right, so she ate that one. And she had to sit down to do that. And Daddy's chair was too big. The baby's chair was too small. And Mommy's chair was just right. So she sat in Mommy's chair. Then she wanted to have a sleep. So she went to find the beds. Daddy's bed was too hard. Mummy's bed was just right. Baby's bed was too soft. So you got it. She went for Mummy's bed because it was just right. Now, Haynes and Arnston used this to show the difference between not enough, too much, and just right in the brain, which is why this example is called the Goldilocks of the brain. So when we are in balance, i.e. just right, we have access to high-level functioning. And some examples of that are goal direction, abstract concepts, making and retrieving memories, decision-making, understanding what others are thinking, and delaying gratification. And that's part of decision-making. So instead of saying, I want this and I want it now, we are able to reflect and do some introspection on why we're making a decision. However, when we are under or overstressed, i.e. in too little or too much, we have impaired functioning, foggy thinking, poor impulse control, poor decision-making, poor memory, and a lack of empathy. And this curve sort of looks like this. So on the left, we have too little. And in principle, that's too little stress or too little stimulation. It doesn't have to be stress. So in principle, there's not enough dopamine and norepinephrine being made in our bodies and our brains. On the opposite side of the spectrum, there's too much stress or stimulation. In other words, too much dopamine and norepinephrine. What you can notice here, for instance, is that they're both on the same level. In other words, it doesn't matter whether you're highly stressed or under stressed, the result is the same. It's the impaired functioning that creates these things here, whether you're too stimulated or understimulated. And of course, just right is in the middle there, where dopamine, norepinephrine, and many, many other chemicals in our bodies are in balance. But these are two of the main ones that we're looking at here. So I'm going to give you a quick example of what this looks like, an example from life. You lose a job you love through no fault of your own, and you have nothing new on the horizon. You are here, understimulated. You get a new job where your boss says they see potential in you. You're coming up, you're here. You start to enjoy your new job a lot, and you're getting to grips with new challenges that inspire you, and you are here. You are asked to lead a special project, and you say yes because you love what you're doing. You are here. You receive recognition and praise from colleagues and your boss alike. Yep, you're in just right, because you're including the fact that you really love what you're doing, etc., and you're being seen and heard for what you do. You are asked to take on other responsibilities because you're so good at your work. That brings you to here, because it's extra. It's starting to get into the area of overstimulation. Suddenly there are staff reductions and you are so loyal that you take on responsibility of 2 other jobs. Sliding scale downwards, unfortunately. You are clearly working hard, and yet you get a negative performance review for not completing your work on time. Then of course you are here. You are overworked, overstimulated, there's too much stress. And to add to that, you're getting a performance review that's negative because you're not completing your work on time and nobody is seeing that you are doing the job of 3 people. So you're not being seen, you're not being heard, you're doing a lot. What happens? You get to foggy thinking, poor impulse control, poor decision making, and poor memory. And regrettably, you go back to the situation you were in. So what can we do about too little? Well, it may seem sort of, what would I say, obvious, but live a values-centered life. Live your life purpose, the life you love. Connect with what's inside of you, the human being. Have your dreams, your visions. Think about possibilities. Challenging and calling forth is also how to get to grasp with too little. Name what you're feeling. Challenge your clients when you see that they're understimulated. And champion them. Yes, they can. The problem with being in too little is that there is no internal chemical energy to actually get up and do something about it. You know, we often hear people say, oh, I should be doing this, I should be doing that, should, could, would, need to, have to. I do not like using those words. Ask your clients, tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? So what to do about too much? Well, again, you know, I am sure as coaches, you know a lot of different tools to help your clients sort of, you know, just relax a bit, calm down, breathe, getting to some mindful exercises. And these, what I'm suggesting here, are also what happens. Suppression. This is normal. Actively pushing the feelings aside, pretending them never let you see you sweat. This is a typical reaction of the human doing. Never let them see you sweat because it's about what you're doing. I have to tell you, it's not effective. What is effective? Name the emotion. Short venting, write it down. Naming is different than ramping it up. And in this situation, if you are helping your clients to name the emotion, it's also about how you ask your powerful questions to ensure that the clients have short venting and then writing it down. So naming it, but not sliding into a long vent or into frustration. Help your clients see how they can control the environment. Ask them where the stressor is and how they can make sure they don't encounter the stressor. Help them put attention on what is important. Focus on what they value and where they are going. Reframing. Finding an empowering way to look at the issue. And the one I mentioned before, mindfulness. It's meditation, it's being present to body sensation, it's being with the emotion. One of the people I love, her books and her studies, etc., is Susan David, who wrote the book Emotional Agility. She talks a lot about being with the emotion. And this is about the human being. This is about being who you are. The world would tell us and our clients, get over it, get over yourself, and stuff like that. And it's not helpful because ignoring these emotions is just going to increase the chemicals that are not helpful and not serving us. So I want to pause there for a minute and ask if anybody has, because I'm going into the demo now, and ask if anybody has any questions they'd like me to clarify on that right now. Let me just go back to what's in the chat now. 2 years of pandemic, one goes inside. Yes, Suniti, but one doesn't always go inside healthily. If you plan your tasks consciously and then stick to it, does the percentage of human being change? Well, you know, as a good coach, I would probably bounce that question back at you. But you can plan your tasks consciously and stick to it. My question would be, how many tasks are you planning? You know, I mean, if you're planning your tasks to fill 100% of your time, what time are you giving yourself to be a human being? So to be mindful, to be present to what's going on in your life, to taking time. Yes, Kara, it's not too much. So you can plan and you can stick to it. But I would challenge you to plan a balance of task and non-task. Moving from doing to being, yes, be mindful of how much you're planning. If you are near 100% on doing, on task oriented, then you can plan and you can make a personal strategy to make an agreement with yourself that 25% of your waking hours, you're going to just be. Suniti, how much is a short vent? I don't know. I think I would say it depends on the client. If you know you've got clients that get deeply into frustration, I would encourage them to stand up, walk around the room, shout at the top of their lungs their frustration out, and then come back into the coaching session. If it's someone who doesn't talk that much about it and finds it difficult to vent, I would maybe give them a little bit more space and encourage them to really speak about what they're feeling, to go deeper inside. So it really depends on the individual. And one day, yes, pausing to reframe is powerful. Silence is not nothing. We as coaches, we can use silence in a very, very powerful way. You know, ask your question and just let it hang there. We all know as coaches how powerful this is. So I'm just going to stop share for a moment. And I would like to ask, I can't see you on my screen. Oh, Shailendra, there you are. So Shailendra, how am I doing for time?
Pretty fine, Hetty.
Okay.
So would you want everybody else to go off video while you're coaching, Shail, or how would you want it?
It might be a good idea, but make sure that everybody is definitely off on mute. But I'm going to put Shailendra on speaker view in my screen so that I can see him a lot larger and focus more on him. So, Shailendra, good afternoon.
Hi, Hetty. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. How are you doing?
I'm good.
I just want to thank you for being prepared to come into this knowing nothing.
Yes.
I just want to qualify for everybody else that we haven't set this up in any way.
Yeah.
And that what we're doing is we're just coming into a coaching session for 10 or 15 minutes where I would like to help you, I don't know, work on whatever you want to work on.
Sure.
So tell me, what is going on with you in your life right now?
Yeah. So, Hetty, coming into this session, one of the things that was on my mind, and I thought I'll bring it up with you, was the fact that, see, as a person, I kind of, you can say, balance between opposites, and that kind of keeps me happy. Just to give an example, like I like to be in the company of people. I enjoy company of people, but I also enjoy solitude. I like to be with myself. I like structure in what I do. Like I've been very fond of processes and how things should be done, etc. But also I like sometimes doing things very spontaneously, like on the spur of the moment, kind of. So that's generally my approach, and that kind of keeps me happy. But occasionally, I mean, luckily not very often, but occasionally. I do kind of feel that, okay, that balance between these so-called opposites has a little bit tilted, and then then I feel a bit of, you can say, stress for a while, saying, yeah, maybe I'm doing too much of this one versus that one, right?
Which direction does the tilt usually go?
So Hetty, I mean, I don't know what to make of it, but if, for example, if I'm very, very busy, then my inclination is to find some time to relax and so on. If I'm very relaxed, doing nothing, then so it's tilts to the other side, saying that, yeah, maybe I need to. So same is between, say, work and play, right? I mean, I enjoy playing, I enjoy working, but if I'm only working, then I feel, yeah, I think I need to.
Okay, so what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like there is a certain amount of guilt in whichever space you're in, that you need to be doing more of the other.
I would say more than guilt, I feel, Hetty, that see the stress that I mentioned, right? That if I am on one side or the other, that kind of brings down my happiness, so to say, and that is what I kind of don't enjoy. So I feel that those are moments, or moments of time which probably got wasted. Like I kind of lost the balance for a while.
Yeah, no, I get it. There's this sort of this inner critic that keeps telling you, and it's almost like blaming you for wasting time. So what could be underneath that feeling? Where do you think this voice is coming from?
So, I mean, I'm maybe guessing a bit Hetty at this point, but see, one of the things that I have believed is that unlike other resources, for example, money or other things, time is something that is not retrievable. Okay, so it's done with, right? Like at the end of this webinar, I would have spent an hour with you on this topic, right? There's no way I can get that time back. Okay, and so so that's how it is. So if I find that, oh, okay, maybe I have been investing too much of time on something, then maybe it's taking some time away from the other things that I also want to focus on. And I do not probably have too much of preference saying, okay, I just want to be doing this forever. So I have multiple interests, and I do not want to just like kind of say, okay, let me do this 100% of my time, whatever that be, even if it is something I enjoy. But I enjoy many things. So, maybe that's something that makes me think that, oh, okay, maybe I should be doing some more of that also.
So maybe if you enjoy many things, which is wonderful, so maybe here what's stressing you is a lack of focus. Would that resonate with you?
I would say more like missed opportunities. I would say this way, saying that if I get busy doing something for a long time, maybe I have missed some opportunity to relax or take a trip out or whatever it is.
Yeah, I'm curious, Shailendra. When did you, or from whom did you learn that missing opportunities was shameful?
I think it is, so the way I would put that, Hetty, is rather than feeling ashamed about it, I feel that whenever there is that balance that I keep saying, right, most often it is, then it creates a sense of, you can say, peace or calm or happiness. And so I would like, aspirationally, I would like to maximize it. So if you ask me, that's how I would like to be all the time, right? So whenever those moments come when it is not so, I feel that, how quickly I can restore that back. Okay. So there is some work that I have to think about it. And when I have to think about it, it feels that, it's not happening naturally. So most of the time I would like this to happen in a very natural fashion, saying that, kind of interplay between these so-called opposites, like,
Absolutely. Well, let me acknowledge, first of all, that you have that balance and that you recognize it and see it, because that's wonderful. And it's something that it's a place you can go to. But it seems like there are moments when you just lose grasp of that balance.
Yes.
Is it possible, would you think you could change the environment that you're in the moment that you notice that stress?
So the answer to that, Hetty, would be sometimes yes and sometimes no, because some of these imbalance, or if that is the right word, is not always within my control. Let's put it this way, right? So maybe when it is, yes, but when it is not. For example, there are certain things that I love to do. Coaching is one of them. And then there are certain things that I have to do because that's required for me to, for example, maybe manage my finances. So I'm not very fond of it, but I have to do it.
Who is?
So when, like I said, when something is in my hands, I do take the effort to kind of, come back and kind of balance it.
Well, I wanted to pick up on something you said about things that are outside your control.
Yes.
We all have things that are outside of our control, but we do have the possibility to control how we react to it.
Yes.
And that is where the control within you lies. You are noticing a heightened level of stress. And in that moment, changing your environment, what could you do differently? Even if the situation is something you can't control.
Yeah. Like typically I kind of try and figure out what's the best response to that situation I can give. Okay. So I know certain things I can't change, but I try and work a bit on what's the best response I can have at that point. So
what values and what values come up for you in that time, that it's important for you in that situation?
So two things. I don't know whether I can call them values or not, Hetty, but two things that are very sacrosanct, for me. One is, for me to be happy. Okay, that's very sacrosanct. Okay, and the other is that not be a cause for others' unhappiness. Okay, so I to the extent I can, I would not want to contribute to others being unhappy. Okay, so
Yeah.
so it's kind of, again, it's the two opposites, or whatever, the kind of balancing that yes.
I'm hearing a value of compassion.
Yeah.
Compassion for yourself,
Yes.
because you want to be happy, but also compassion for others.
Yes.
That's a beautiful value to have, and I want to acknowledge and honor that value in this moment.
I try, Hetty.
Try is how you do, very clearly. So taking this value of compassion that you honor, how can you use that value to look differently at the situation you might find yourself in when you're feeling that stress of wasting time? How different would it look from a place of compassion?
I think, yeah, I mean, when I think of that, Hetty, I think one of the things that probably I feel can help me is that, if I can, just laugh it off. Okay. There are times when, you find yourself in a situation, and, that, and I feel that, yeah, I mean, just kind of take it as it is, not. So I heard you say a few minutes back, right? Not sweat over it, right? So
Don't let them see my sweat. But this isn't about, letting them see your sweat. This is about not sweating.
yeah. But okay, what I was trying to say is that not take it too seriously. Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's so talking to you, I'm thinking that, okay, like, since I'm balanced most of the time, the occasional times that I'm not, well, so be it, like, treat it as one of those things that happen sometimes. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I can see this big smile on your face. It looks like this idea resonates with you.
Yeah.
I'd just like you for a moment just to sit quietly and take a couple of deep breaths in and then out, and just let this idea of being kind to yourself land with you. Just do that for a moment. Just breathe in and, say maybe out loud, be kind to myself. Can you do that?
Yeah. Be kind to myself, and kind to others.
This huge, wonderful, beautiful core value of compassion that I can see that you carry through life. So how does it feel now? Very shortly, what does the situation we started this discussion with look like from this place you're at now?
I certainly feel one thing for sure, Hetty, that the fact that I said, it stresses me. Obviously, it came from a position where I was feeling conflicted, saying, okay, so how do I deal with it? And then to the place that I moved was that, I mean, it's okay, right? I mean, yeah, I mean, it's fine. So maybe it doesn't solve all the things, but it just, like, makes it slightly easier to deal with, right? So it's more relaxing right now, saying that, yeah.
And it makes you mindful of the fact of the things that you feel are stressing you from time to time.
Yeah.
And it gives you a tool to say, no, I'm just going to let it go. It is what it is. Be kind to myself.
Yes.
Because that's something that, and this is how neuroplasticity works. Each time we have conversations like this with people, you learn something new. I always say every day is a school day. Every day, if we can learn something new, you will not forget this. The next time you feel this bubbling up in your body and your brain, you'll go, no, be kind to myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your vulnerability and authenticity to share with me. I really
thank you, Hetty, for being my coach and, making this evening really, really very, very useful for me. Thank you.
Great. And I hope you carry this forward and pay it forward.
Sure. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. So I'm going to quickly go back to share screen just to finish off. Let me just pull this back up. There we go. There's that. Share and click onto the slide. So just let me click through this because I've pulled it up at the wrong. And we've had that. So strategies for finding balance. Too much. Go for a walk. Be kind to yourself. Take a nap. Be kind to yourself. Listen to some instrumental music. Be kind to yourself. Take some time to be quiet. Be kind to yourself. Too little, and I didn't go into this in much detail with Shailendra because the stress was mostly, I noticed, coming from an inner critic that was pushing. So that's more too much than too little. But when you're in too little, focus on task. Read or watch a movie. Bake a cake or cook a nice meal. Plan a day out or a work meeting. And the importance here is to get a balance in your daily life, in your waking hours, between task and rest, task and peace, between being switched on and switched off. There are many different sort of metaphors you could use for it. So there is also a task positive network in our brain, and there is a default mode network in our brain. And the default mode network is called that because that's where we go when we're asleep, when our brain cleans out all the stuff we don't need. So it isn't about always being mindful. It isn't about always being on task. It's about finding balance. Because, the world tells us that we are human doings. Okay, they use the word human being, but generally our society asks us to be human doings, to be focused on task. What's success based on? It's based on how much you do. It's based on what you do in life. People come and ask, and we actually become, what would I call it? We become programmed not to tell people who we are. How are you? Oh, I'm so busy. No, that's about what you do. How are you? I am sad. I feel sad. I feel tired. No, I'm so busy. And I'll give you a quick example. When someone goes for a job interview and they're asked, tell me a little bit more about yourself, you will find often people will just regurgitate their CVs, their resumes. Whereas the recruiter has your resume. Why would you tell them something they know? What they're asking is something they don't know. And the sad thing is, in this world today, very often we don't even know who we are. I've had multiple times with clients when I said, well, no, that's what you do. Who are you? And they'll just sit and look at me, and some will tear up and they'll go, actually, I don't know. And when you go into a place of neuroscience and you see that you've got the task positive network and the default mode network that need to be in balance to be fulfilled, to lead a resonant life, you can imagine what it's like if everybody is on task all the time, which is what society often asks from us. And that's why I find human doing and human being, the difference between the two, extremely important for my clients. The majority of them are just human doings. And I like to bring some human being into that and help them find balance. Once they've recognized their human doing and their human being, then we work on integration, bringing them back to a place that actually Shailendra described, he often is in, which is beautiful. So there is so much more I could say about this, but I'm really aware that there are some questions probably coming up in the chat. So I would just like to do a couple of acknowledgements at the end of my presentation. First of all, thank you to Ashwari for inviting me. I always love the opportunity to share my passion about this. And I am aware that this is a non-commercial and a non-promotional webinar, and I want to honor that. However, I also need to honor my deep sense of gratitude for my learning that goes to Ann Betts and Ursula Pottinger of Be Above Leadership. And if you're more interested in their work, then I'm more than happy to connect with you on LinkedIn. So I'm at Q&A, at which point I will stop share. I'm not exactly sure. Oh, we've got a few minutes left for Q&A.
So thank you so much, Shell and Hetty. And there are a couple of questions. I can see a question from Bandhana. What are the signs to know that it's too much or too less?
The signs are that you can see physical signs as a coach. You can hear verbal signs. It's in the sort of language when it's too much. And the physical signs are when someone is coming into a coaching session agitated, or they're talking about, and this didn't work and that didn't work, and I'm so tired and I can't do this. And, you know, this is like sort of, and the other way, so very much in the too much, they're switched on, they're hyper aroused, you would say. And for too little, you probably find that they're sort of slumped down in the chair and that they haven't got energy to answer your questions, and they're probably what we call hypo-aroused. There has been some work done on this by Daniel Siegel on the window of tolerance. And we all have a middle window of tolerance. That's you know, depending on who we are, it can be shorter or wider. And you notice, if you Google the window of tolerance, you should be able to find it on the internet. And you'll notice that finding someone's default window of tolerance, you will immediately recognize when they go into hyperarousal or hypoarousal. And it's all about us as coaches learning about what we're seeing in our clients, about what we're intuitively seeing, about what we're hearing, what we're seeing with our eyes. There is a great deal of responsibility on us as coaches to learn more about the human condition so that we can be more effective in serving our clients. It's all very well just to have a nice conversation, but if we know the scientific background to what's going on with them in their bodies and in their brain, and you'll notice I'm going body and brain, which is, for me, it's just integrated. You know, it behooves us to know this so that we can serve our clients more deeply. And one of the places that you could start to understand this integration between body and brain is a fantastic book that is not particularly scientific. Well, it's well researched and scientifically underpinned, but it's written in a very, very easy way to read. And that is Your Body is Your Brain by Amanda Blake. Amanda Blake is a scientist, a researcher. She has worked a lot with Richard Boyatzis, who you probably know of emotional intelligence fame, works with Daniel Goleman. But Amanda Blake is also a coactive coach. So she's written it also from the perspective that we can use in our coaching. We don't have to be neuroscientists. And another book I would highly recommend if you want to know a little bit more about the brain and about some of the myths out there is 7.5 Lessons About the Brain by Lisa Feldman Barrett.
Thank you.
So I hope that helped answer that question.
Yes, and that answers the next question by Chitra also, who was asking for references of the work. So there's another question by, hold on, yeah. Can you see the chat, Hetty?
I can.
Yeah, so there's another question there. How to manage balance between emotions and expectations?
Oh, that's another 600 hours of webinars. It's about learning to see your client as a human doing and a human being, because it's not your emotion and your expectation, it's theirs. And once you are able to normalize for them that they are a human being as well as a human doing, and learning about neuroplasticity and how we're born and how we grow. I often say to people, where do these expectations come from? You heard me ask Shailendra who he learned this from. And this is critical, because when we're born, we know nothing. And what we know, we've learned since the day we were born. And so just imagine the impact of what we learned from our parents, from our school friends, from our teachers, from our lecturers at university, etc. And we've taken that all on board as given, and we act, our behavior is based on what we've learned in the past. Now, when you're 5 years old and your mother says, don't put your hand in the fire, it serves you greatly at that moment to protect you. But when you're 35 or 45, there may be moments where you need to build the courage to walk through the fire. And the learning when you were 5 years old no longer serves you. Each season of our life needs different things. And yet there are some people who are still working on the expectations that were laid upon them when they were 5 or 10 or 15 years old, and it no longer serves them in this season of their lives. And to learn how the brain works and how neuroplasticity works. Another great piece of work, also by Lisa Feldman Barrett, and you can find a TED on this online, which is called, if I'm not wrong, You Are Not at the Mercy of Your Emotions. She shows how our experience from the past and the emotions that are created today are based on the predictions we are making with only the past as information. And you can actually change the brain to predict something different. That's fascinating stuff. So the expectation part and the emotional part are connected in a way, but also disconnected. Because the expectations of what we've learned in the past does not have to necessarily create the emotion we're in at the moment. And I'm getting a little bit more in depth here, and I want to come to a few other questions as well. But Lisa Feldman Barrett is a name to remember if you're interested in looking at the emotions particularly.
Sure. Thank you so much. Another question is, in the corporate rat race, the doing is important. So like we are a coach with corporate clients, one is a coachee and the other is a client who is paying for you being the coach. So how does one drive this point to the client?
Well, what comes up for me, because I get this all the time through the university, we do a lot of corporate coaching programs, and I have conversations with HR and we have conversations with line managers, and we set the goals for the client, for the coachee, based on the corporate's goals. And yet, when I get into an individual conversation, a confidential conversation with the individual, I will reiterate these goals and I will find out whether their values match those goals. There may be some fear in bringing this up with their line manager, but the only thing that interests me is that human being sitting in front of me. At that moment in time, I can't say I don't care about the corporate behind that client, but it is not my focus. My focus is to find balance for that human being, because I know once that human being has found balance, their impact on themselves and on their corporate environment will be increased exponentially. And they will become more motivated and more effective. And yes, it does happen from time to time that a client then discovers that their personal core values do no longer match with that, well, never have matched with the company, but they've gone to work with that company, for instance, because it's one of, the top, the Fortune 500s or whatever. So their reasoning for joining the company has not resonated with them. And it happens. People leave because they've had the coaching. It is what it is. And I always bring it up with HR departments and line managers. Are you aware that the consequence of this coaching may be that you lose this employee? It's possible. But ultimately, if the employee stays with the company, they're more likely, because they're in balance, to be more effective in what they're doing. So, goals are something like an action list, a to-do list. And then I would say to the client, okay, we have a to-do list. What's your to-be list?
Absolutely. And that takes me to the next question, Hetty here. Sometimes finding balance becomes a state of doing for some people, and you find them stressing about it too. So what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, that's absolutely true. And particularly if we're looking at corporate world, what's happening is you find yourself wanting to do or having to get on task because what you're actually doing is not resonating with you. It's not fulfilling. It's not challenging. And I think all of us get to this point in our lives, Some point it's like, oh, something's got to change, but I don't know what. And the powerful thing about what we do as coaches is not to fix the person because the person isn't broken. What we do is we open possibilities and we look at what is it you need right now. Shailendra was saying very clearly, there are times when he's relaxing and he's in the right place and the inner critic says you're not doing enough. And then he's in that doing place and the inner critic is saying you're not being enough. And then it's like, okay, so how can we find balance? There is that moment you say, okay, come back to me, to who I am. What do I need in this moment? As coaches, we know there is nothing more important than being in this moment. And those people that find themselves needing to go to task are often in too little. They're understimulated. And then when you point that out to them, well, just a simple question like, well, what's not working for you right now? Just let them talk. And then our intuition as coaches reads between the lines and picks things out. That's where our superpower comes from, folks.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Hetty. I'm cognizant of the time, and thank you so much for doing this for us and bringing this topic to us, and a lovely session. Thank you so much. And
absolutely my pleasure. You probably realize I love talking about this stuff, and I want to reiterate my invitation for you to connect with me on LinkedIn. And if you have any other questions or whatever, then just put them through LinkedIn in the private messaging, and I'd be happy to connect with you.
Thanks, Shailendra, for being so vulnerable, being so open, being so courageous in front of everybody. Thank you so much for being a coach today. And thank you, everyone. I have put in the link of the CCUs in the chat box. Kindly feel free to submit the form and you will receive your CCUs for this webinar next year now. So for the past webinars, you must have already received your CCUs, and for this one will be now counted in the next year. So thank you so much, everybody, and have a great time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So I'd love to see these questions on the chat. That's point.